Okay, so this video today is going to be focusing on what is relative age effect and how does it affect the talent identification process. So firstly, what is the relative age effect? Well, in youth sport competitions, children are divided according to their chronological age. As children are separated into age groups, they are invariably cognitive, physically, emotionally different between the youngest and the oldest ones. The relative age effect, which refers to the overall difference in age between individuals within an age group. This may result in significant differences in performance. So, what is the relative age effect? Well, here I have an example of Ross Barkley. This example of Ross was when he was 16 years old. And as you can clearly see on the image, there is a much bigger height, physicality, and most probably speed difference between the two players. So, Ross Barkley was born on the 5th of December in 1993, okay? So the 5th of December, that makes him a quartile 2 birthday, which is one of the older players in his age group, which I will go on to touch in a little while. Ross Barkley was clearly a talented footballer, so he clearly had some form of ability, but would we question whether Ross was scouted and brought into the system because of his height, speed, or strength? That is definitely something we may need to consider. Here, Ross, it shows a clear physical difference, and this is something that players up and down the country are coming up against on a more regular basis. Players are coming up against people that are nearly a foot taller, are much stronger and are much quicker, which is relating to scouts or people that are recruiting, bringing in people into the system which are not necessarily the most talented or gifted footballers. So, as I highlighted before, Ross Barkley was born on the 5th of December, which makes him a quartile 2 birthday. But what actually are quartiles? Well, quartile 1 is from people born between September and November. Quartile 2, December to February, which Ross fits in. Quartile 3, March to May. And quartile 4, June to August. So, why does this matter? What makes quartiles important? Well, people are currently being brought into the system across a variety of sports from quartile 1, so they were born between September and November, which makes them, the majority of them, the biggest, the fastest and the strongest players. But is this a true reflection on talented individuals? Well, no. Quartile 4 or quartile 3 players may be just as good, or if not better, than the quartile 1 and 2 players technically. However, they are not being noticed because of their lack of physicality. So, does this mean we are bringing the wrong players into the system? Well, if you bring in a quartile 1 and 2 player into the system, what is the likelihood that they are going to stay with the same physical advantage as when they reach a professional or an under 18s level compared to the quartile 4 players? Well, the likelihood of that happening is very slim. In fact, the quartile 3 or 4 players might even catch them up or overtake them in terms of physicality, which will then give the quartile 3 and 4 players an advantage technically. However, I'm not saying that the quartile 1 and 2 players may not be as good technically. I'm just saying that there is a clear, significant difference in the players being brought into the system because of their advantage physically. As I said just a little earlier, about the implications on the selection process. So, how does this impact on the selection process? Well, Much and Grandin 2001 state that being relatively older allows the potential for developing athletes to demonstrate a performance advantage at early identification points, and therefore the quartile 1 and 2 birth players have a clear physical advantage over the 3 and 4 players, which makes it easier for them players to be spotted during performance. Furthermore, many talent identification processes are sought to identify talent through measures such as physical performance, which fails to acknowledge the evolving and nature of talent. So just people are being brought into the system because of their physicality, however, they are not taking into consideration people's technical ability, people's psychological ability in terms of decision making, solving problems, and people's social aspects. So, how well do people interact with others? These are not being taken into consideration when bringing players into the system. So, do we confuse talent with relative age effect? Well, here's an image of the distribution of birth months among the 1989 World Cup youth soccer players. So, in light purple is the under 20s, and the under 17s being the dark purple. Well, there is a clear physical advantage, over the people being selected in quartile 1 and 2 birth dates compared to 3 and 4. So if we take both under 20s and 17s at quartile 1, there is around 45 to 47% of all players being selected there in quartile 1 compared to quartile 4, where there is less than 10% of players being selected. So does this mean we are bringing the wrong players into the system? So if we're saying we're bringing the wrong players into the system, does this mean that Messi wouldn't have made it? Well, Messi, as a young player in Argentina, he made his way over to Barcelona, and he clearly had a less physical advantage than the other players within the squad. As a result of this, Barcelona gave him growth hormone tablets to try and improve his physicality while at Barcelona. So would Messi have made it in England? Well, my opinion is no. The reason behind this is that we are overlooking people with the technical ability, and we also don't take into consideration other factors such as their social skills and their psychological understanding and ability, and we are just focusing on players' physical ability. So if we reflect on that, we could have had a technical player just as good as Messi within our system or outside of the system playing grassroots sport, but we have missed them because we are focusing too heavily on the physical advantages of players.